What's that? What are you thinking? I'm not sure. Reflection notes. I think Grower is not gonna be here, and there's another planning commission that's not gonna be here, but I still kept the election of the chair and vice chair on, because we really need to get that approved. I mean, I put it off last time, I think we got it, you know, but I'm like, well, I don't know if we'll ever have it. It's all the yeah,
Who took Bryce Rower's seat on the,
Board of Adjustments.
there we go, yeah.
I remember. I'll look it up for you, yeah.
All right. Have they met any time?
Yeah, they actually did.
Really?
Yeah, they hadn't met for over a year, and they met just a few weeks ago.
Oh.
And,
They meet when there's a, like a rebuttal, like problem, right? And so what was the trouble?
It was on a setback, and they ended up denying it. And so they were asking, there was a setback on Old Snow Basin Road, and it was a smaller lot and was oddly configured. And on that one, I think they were asking for too much. I think if they would have just been asking for maybe a front yard setback, but not front, side, and rear yard setback,
Oh.
they might have gotten it, but they just denied it on all of them. The Board of Adjustments is totally different when they review it versus what you guys review things against. They have 5 criteria that they have to comply with, and if they don't comply with one of them, it's not granted.
Ah, gotcha.
A little bit different.
So they have set guidelines on yay or nay.
Correct.
So we don't have quorum yet, right? So we can't call anything. I was gonna ask later, but I might as well ask now since it doesn't really need to be public record. Has there been any movement on either CW Basin or Cowboy Partnership? Neither one?
They still have to address. Cowboy Partners, like I mentioned before, the sewer and water.
Oh, is that what's holding it up?
Yeah, the commission held things up when.
Really? When I listened to their work session, it sounded like they weren't pleased with the bifurcation of the street and all that other stuff.
That was another one too.
So has there been anything beyond that work session?
That's it, yeah. If there is, then I will update you
Right,
in this
yeah.
meeting, but.
Curious. And then CW Basin with the extra
No,
PDR still has
so
that.
it's still waiting on that, so. We'll see what happens.
Are they waiting for CW Basin to do anything or just for the commission discussing it?
I'd have to go back and look, I don't remember.
The way I remember. CW Basin wanted the money back from. For the improvement. They had to put money in a. Not a trust, an account to be held. And then, but, yeah, thank you, and that's probably. But then the other developer had offered to cover the cost, which would let them get their money back. For an exchange of TDRs. The TDRs that the county then had to decide whether they could be lost. I feel like I'm the only one that remembers.
Well, yeah, I have to go back on that. I just have. There's so many things going on in West Weaver right now, it's
Oh, really?
like trying to remember everything, I have to go back and look at my notes.
Seems like that was kind of left with hey, this could be a little win-win. The developer ends up not having to, he gets his money back, did he escrow for the, fixing the intersection or something?
Right.
They do the land exchange and the county's off the hook for the entire cost.
It was a win. Well, it was a win for me, a win for the town, a win for the other developer. My opinion was it was a loss for the valley because it's granted this non-existent bonus of 60.
Well, that was the question, is it non-existent? It was
Right.
in the, I think it was in the original plan. When we found 68 for it. Yeah.
Oh,
Filled out and the county came and said, this is the number of development rights that are out there for
that location.
right, for the
but then they
valley,
rezoned.
for the whole valley. And that location was counted in that number for the 15,000 or something.
Oh, with the general plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these were in that number. So they didn't disappear out of nowhere, they were in the counted number. And the idea was, well, that was supposed to be kind of density neutral, whatever happens, you know, if increase the number of units, you're not supposed to decrease it.
No, it actually says that we should look for ways to decrease it.
It went, we had this whole argument already between our board. And it ended up. The flip over. It was,
Well, decrease are like the.
Higher than.
Yeah, the land trust, rather than just something.
but I don't think it's better.
So we have a farm, you can say.
We have a farm.
Good. Welcome, everybody. Tell us what we're doing tonight. We had, one big item pulled off the agenda. And that was the
Mhm,
agriculture deal.
mhm.
So we have to that. Tammy, you're the person on.
Okay, so our first application is a design review application for Powder Mountain. They're looking to expand their Hidden Lake parking lot area. They're looking to add an additional 178 stalls. We have, in reviewing their application before it was formally accepted in, fire and engineering made a few comments about connecting those two parking lots. And so they have resubmitted a site plan showing a connection there that would allow a fire truck to make that turn. Either from the upper to the lower or vice versa. Engineering had some concerns regarding their stormwater and they have since addressed those. So engineering is recommending conditional approval. They will require that these are that compacted road base is used both on the roadway, which I think is Powder Ridge Road leading up to the parking lots as well as within the parking lots. That makes sense. Do you want me to pull it up on a screen or you got a map? Then look at, but that's what they're proposing. They are proposing to mitigate erosion issues with an erosion control blanket and some seeding of native species up there. And planning feels that this satisfies design review requirements regarding landscaping.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not much vegetation on that
There's not,
area.
right?
It's kind of an embankment hill for the upper parking lot, but is there,
Mhm.
where's access to the resort? You have to walk out to the road to do that?
I believe the idea is to walk up to the upper parking lot. Here, and they would shuttle to various parts of the resort, to various lifts.
So there would be a shuttle for the parking lot to get to them.
That's what they've indicated in conversations, yes.
Where's their eventual hotel location? Is that listed or is that?
This site, so the last time there was a hotel brought to this group, it was on this site.
Yeah.
It was dispersed, or a hotel kind of attached here with dispersed
I
cabins.
thought it kind of came off that edge, but
Yeah,
Yeah, they're planning on this just being temporary
Yeah, I see.
and then they'll come back with. Then who knows what temporary is with that?
But that's one of my questions that I circled was somewhere in this packet, it talks about how. somewhere. That this area is designated in the master plan for future mixed use development, and when that future development takes place, we'll plat this land, like, it's just kind of. I had questions about like, so what are we doing here now compared to what they're planning to, like, so this is just a temporary use
Three
of
to-
the land.
Right, 3 to 5 years tops. We do have parking issues on that access road, on that dirt road. It can get pretty crowded. This would pull all of the
People are
parking.
there now.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, this would pull all of the parking off of there.
Is parking legal? Where people are parking there, because people didn't used to park there, and now in the last couple seasons, I've seen them parking up on that corner right over here. Is that legal in the winter?
On public roads, yes.
Mhm.
I mean, around Snow Basin, there's signs in certain places
Right.
that say no, and other places around Powder Mountain, there are signs that say no.
Yeah, the road going up there, I don't think it is legal there, but the roads down below, like on Summit Pass, things like that.
So just adjacent to this intersection right over here, where people are parking right now, and then down one of the residential streets,
Yeah.
is that legal?
Yes.
There are winter parking restrictions due to snow removal concerns.
Yes, I know, so I'm asking, in the winter, is it legal where people have been parking a
I
lot?
think on Summit Pass, it's legal, but on the other ones, it's not in the winter time. But I have to get back to
If the
the.
people are just parking a little bit down that residential street, so you're thinking that's not legal?
Right. And I'm almost certain on the private streets, it's not, but that's for them to enforce.
But there are no private streets up there, just,
There is tons of private streets. The only public
No, I mean,
street is
with-
Summit Pass and Spring Park. And Spring Park should not have been accepted as a public street. It is horrible. But those are the main two.
of the streets where the houses are being built, you're saying those are private roads?
Correct. Yeah, Summit Pass is the only public road in Spring Park,
Just the roads going to those homes though,
going off of there.
going off the main artery.
And those are the ones that were built with the bond,
Summit Pass was built with the bond.
the others were not.
Correct.
So this, and I couldn't tell by, and I know this is a sloped area and a slope runs down this way. Does the county have code that says how sloped the parking lot can be or not be?
Yeah, engineering looked at that. And they
It's indicating.
It's a drainage
looked
basin.
at the connection
I can't read it.
coming down, they felt
Yeah.
that's sufficient. I'm not sure what that percentage is, but we can find that out for.
Just if it's listed, good, because I can tell you. Real world observation, in the flat parking lots up there, when it snows during the day, and people in rental cars especially are stuck. They're flat, all the lots are pretty much flat now, so here. Is going to be an issue if it's, you know, if they don't. And they can't during the day, adequately remove the snow, so. And the county probably does, it's not a county issue, so, right?
Yeah, it's not a county issue there, but we're actually working with, just so you guys are aware. And they are gonna be taking care of some of the roads up in that area.
Is that?
So it's still summer?
That's good. Yeah, they, eventually, they're gonna, I think they want to take over the roads, but, for right now, they're just eating and food. You know, it
Oh, they're
helps
gonna
us
the normal one,
that,
the whole thing, from all of
correct.
it, you can sell them the snowboard.
They're going to, I think, be leasing it, that's not fully worked out on that.
That's good.
Oh, that's you. That's good news, so you're saving. Yeah.
What did you mean by eventually taking over the roads?
I think they would like to have them
But they're caring
dedicated
for
to them,
Dedicated them as in private.
yeah, I think down the road, but right now they're public,
Mhm.
so we'll see what happens.
And the project to put a back entrance into that area, is that still active?
Good question, we just went up about, was it 2 weeks ago?
It's been, maybe 2 to 3
Yeah.
weeks ago.
Went up and drove that back road. And it is more doable than you would think. There was just one segment that needs to be regraded. It's, yeah, it can be done.
Is that off of Avon?
That's coming up, what's the name of that road?
Evergreen.
Oh, Davenport?
Davenport.
Yeah, so it's coming
On
up,
the backside, it's coming from, like Monte Cristo area.
Yeah.
correct, and
Before
then
you
you
get
come
to
up,
Ogden.
and then you come up Davenport, and then that takes you right up, to the resort. And it is in good condition, I mean, I wouldn't say good condition, but it's drivable. And there is some areas where there have to be some property exchanges that would have to take place, and things like that, and we're actively working with them.
Connect into a public road on top.
Yeah, but this road would just be for emergency egress. It wouldn't be for, and it would only be during the summertime.
Like a crash
There's
gate.
no intent, crash gate, yeah. There's no intent for this to be used in the winter time. Because really the only issue is in the summertime with getting out of there with fire and that. But right now, the fire district has said that if there is a fire up there, most likely it's gonna be shelter in place. And so with this next subdivision that they're proposing that I probably shouldn't talk about it because it's not on the agenda. So,
So,
but I'll
but
bring
there
it.
is that other agenda item in my note was, what about the proposed fire station up there? And I know that the other agenda item is not Summit's or whatever they're called now. Power Mountain's responsible for the fire station. Correct. But so 60 more condos, right? That's what this other agenda item is. Does that in any way go into triggering when the fire station up there would be necessary?
It does. We've been working with our fire district on that, trying to get their input on when it would really be necessary. They don't feel like it is with this one, but they do feel when we get to that commercial area and they do a hotel and things like that, that's gonna trigger that. And we've talked to Summit, they're one of that.
And actually, I think since then, Rick, I believe that the Weaver Fire District has come to an agreement with Powder Mountain. They've got a time certain within the next 3 to 5 years, regardless of commercial development, because they continue to see residential development going in up there. So I believe they've got a date from Powder Mountain as far as when that needs to be installed.
The fire station up there.
Yes.
So who's? I think you already Powder Mountain, is it Powder Mountain or is it Summit or
Summit.
Summit?
It is still Summit.
Yeah.
Okay.
They still use that word?
Actually,
They're
they
changing.
Don't.
I don't
The
They had me,
rebranding.
they had me change the standing meeting invite to Powder
That
Mountain.
was just recently, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think they're phasing that out.
That's kind of what I thought they were trying to rebrand that and.
Mhm.
Okay.
Nice, they're getting a lot of stuff done up there. That's a chance to see.
So it's this applicant, Rick Everson.
He's the engineer for them.
Okay.
Yeah. He's, yeah, he's not one of their, that has, holding in that area, but he just representing them.
So would it be better to have Rick Everson call agent, engineer agent, or he could.
My other question on the drawing for that parking lot was, it says. I don't know where
Are
it
you
said
still
it,
on the first item?
the parking lot.
Yeah.
Put washout, vehicle washout,
Yeah, I have that circle.
I don't, what does that mean,
Not
mean,
wash out.
wash
It'll
out.
wash down.
wash down, so
I saw that.
when you leave the ski area, you can wash your car?
That's what I was
I'm pretty sure that's not what it means, but
It's,
That's how they-
Construction.
no,
it's more just for when they're grading for dust control and mud.
Construction.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's all that is.
I thought we could wash our bike after, and I'm like.
Well, that would be nice.
I was like, that's a nice little addition.
Well, you have that. On the second unit, second one.
Yeah.
If we do the amendment for the conditional use permit, does it alter the original conditional use permit conditions?
Tammy? you wanna-
Not necessarily. It
Not a straight
Yeah.
answer.
could be, well, I mean, it could be if you want them to come in and amend their entire CUP. They could come in and do that. We'd hold them to current standards, current conditional use standards. They're coming back before you to amend their CUP because they're realigning their roadways. They tried to gain access for this phase 2 through phase 1. They couldn't come to an agreement with the HOA in phase 1. And so we asked them to come back and possibly look at an additional access off of that UDOT road off of Powder Mountain. They've done that. So they were given preliminary approval from you guys back in January for their subdivision, conditioned upon them getting approval for their CUP amendment. So any changes to their CUP layout, they've got to go back and amend the conditional use permit. And depending on how far they've gotten in the subdivision process, they may have to come back, which they did. They went before you guys for a second preliminary approval because of that roadway realignment.
I missed all this. So where was the previous roadway? In front of the original?
The previous roadway, so. Let me
Just
see.
when they come through the other condos.
Yeah,
And that caused some problems with the existing condo HOA?
yeah, they just didn't want the traffic through there. They didn't like the fact that there's a phase 2, but there's an access easement here that comes in and accesses phase 1. The original plat shows a turnaround and continuation through here and another single access. Where these guys, they couldn't seem to settle on a solution that made everyone happy, and so, and yet they couldn't just have a single access for 60 units. And so they're proposing a roadway through here, and it'll actually come out through
Yeah.
what will eventually be a phase 3.
Setbacks and everything, and so.
On the
But,
corner of that.
They,
yeah, right here.
I asked,
Yeah, preliminary approval
So how
vests
does
them in their
approving this
density
affect
and their
all of
street
the
layout.
things
So
we
if they're making changes to that, they have to come back and get
For
preliminary
sure,
approval again,
because she's
which they
not
did.
sure.
All right.
So for sure.
Yeah,
I just missed the first part of that.
So
I
this is
good.
just the road.
Background to understand
Yeah.
where it was and where it's going.
Issues, but
Mhm.
if there was architecture or snow issues, those would still be in place, like a previous. That wouldn't supersede them.
Do we need to say that in the?
You definitely could. Just to, you know,
Double check.
verify that, but. Yeah.
Cause I read
It
through
wouldn't
this and I
hurt.
was concerned that I didn't see some of it. I didn't realize that this wasn't just trying to address everything that we had said last time.
You
And
know, those would still be in place, but
Okay.
you could definitely put that in there.
This is nicer. If I remember right, that road came back around the back. This is way better.
Oh, it's a lot better. Yeah.
Well, this traffic up front wasn't interfered with the parking area of the original condos.
Yeah. Yeah, it's much better.
Is there any continuing issue with the original condos and then new development? Same owner, right?
They had a lot of.
no, they're like in a lawsuit or something, or at least they were, right? It was like a, they were contentious.
They really did not like this.
Does that,
The two are not connected.
They're not connected, but the owner for this, he actually purchased the land in phase 1 and is finishing the build out for the condos in phase 1. But he was not the original applicant back in the 80s for the CUP.
So when it's all done, this development, both phases will have a total of 3 entrances, the current one and 2 new ones.
Uh-huh.
because the initial phase 1 would be on that original entrance.
Yeah.
How many units would
Which
be
it
there?
was only supposed to have two. Right.
Is that problematic for traffic?
UDOT doesn't think so.
We haven't had any issues. Was UDOT, did they give comments on this?
They've been communicating back and forth with the applicant. We have asked the applicant to come back with a UDOT approval before they come for final approval of the subdivision.
That's what I thought. There was some.
Mhm.
Because there's a road across the street, this upper entrance or exit into this cabin, that cabin area. Do we know where that is? You're gonna have 2 entrances onto that road?
Considerations that need to.
This one, let me pull this up
During
here.
traffic and congestion.
Talking about this, right? So,
Yeah, 'cause across the street, there's an entrance to the cabins too somewhere.
yeah, there's some pending development here on the corner. So when we go to this map here, let me see if I can zoom in and turn off some layers. There's some pending development. We tried to kind of get the roads to line up, but I think topography makes it challenging. And I'll show you where this is. So here's the corner of Powder Mountain and Summit Pass Road. We've got discussions of development going here. We discussed possibly trying some kind of connection here, but number one, we didn't necessarily want any walkway across there. Engineering deemed it way too dangerous to try and have a road connection across there and have any kind of cross traffic right there. They'd rather not see that. And topographically, it makes it very challenging because I think it gets really steep right there.
2 parcels to the left, there's an entrance to those cabins
Oh, here.
right there. So
uh-huh,
where is
yeah.
that in relation to the exit of this development that we're talking about?
That's a good question. Here's the entrance here. I believe the exit is here, but let me pull up the site plan
It
for
seems like a
you.
lot of,
We're not, where this is private and this is as far as it'll go. It's not a requirement we would make to have them connect
okay,
to this entrance over here. This is essentially a driveway for all of those units. So we wouldn't necessarily be looking at connection right there.
so it's uphill a little bit from that.
Mhm. Right, I think that's the entrance there.
Tammy, this is phase two,
Yes.
but
mhm.
in here, there's a note about phase three.
Yes.
What is that?
Phase three, they haven't formally, I take it back, they have formally submitted a conditional use permit for a phase three that you guys will see in a month or two. Their phase three is actually right here on the corner. They purchased this land here from Summit, from Powder Mountain.
Okay.
So this is their phase three. This road access will cut through phase three and hit Powder Mountain right about there.
So it will service phase 3 as well.
Yes.
So
Without
that's,
conditional
yeah,
permit.
that's my
Mhm.
concern, is only not knowing what's coming in the future. Will whatever we may or may not approve be enough?
You most likely have to come back, they'll have to come back and amend their conditional use.
And then,
Yeah.
This isn't the last time.
And would you anticipate additional entrances?
I don't know what I can speak to.
Yeah, I don't think we should talk about that because it's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
So we're looking at proposed site plan, where that road just dead end.
Yeah.
That's where phase three starts. Is that right?
Correct.
That's what I thought, too, but that's not what they're showing.
It's a road.
But we actually, how come we approved a road change in this, so no, there's not an additional entrance on the road.
No, say that again.
The road doesn't connect to this drawing. It goes to phase 3.
Right. And they're gonna have to obtain an easement, to get out there if phase 3 does not come online before this.
So how do we approve it when? Like. We're
They'll-
supposed to say,
they'll
yeah,
have
this
to
drawing
address
looks
that.
good, even though we don't know what your road looks like.
Yeah,
or
that's-
if it'll have
At subdivision level, they'll have to provide that easement, and you could also require this in conditional use permit, but in final approval, they have to obtain that easement if this happens before they get to phase 3. Because they're gonna have to provide that access out onto the road.
So the immediate entrance was going to be the higher road, not the one going through phase 3. Because they can't
I
complete,
think they're doing both, aren't they, Tammy?
We
Well,
don't know, because we don't. know.
the timing of phase three, so we haven't even accepted phase three in. That's why I don't feel like I can discuss it. I don't know what's going to change.
Does this text right here talk about that road? Is that what that text? Did you look at the screen from Fox? The little thing you're looking at?
we go to that line without the phase 3.
This says,
The second access point for 2 and 3.
We will
Where are you
also
reading
be
that?
creating and recording an
page
access.
6 of
easement.
13. Well, that was the
mhm,
original one with the extra stuff.
mhm.
Yeah, well, but we don't know that UDOT has approval for the both entrances, just one.
Right, that was a requirement in preliminary, they've got to provide that for the final approval of the subdivision. To UDOT's access.
so,
Oh, not just one.
Correct.
That's the problem, is like phase 3 he's talking about, but like we're supposed to make some plans that he's gonna have an exit out of there. How do we approve that based on, like, well, conditionally, we'd have to say conditionally, as long as you get another exit in phase 3. Cause there's no access on that.
Did the fire district require a different access for,
No,
okay, so they were fine with just the one?
they were fine with this, knowing that there was either going to be an easement recorded by separate document to get this back out to Powder Mountain Road.
So we're only ruling on one
Would that need to
entrance
be
or
a
exit.
condition that
I
there
think
would
you
be-
should make that a condition. I think it'd be,
Cause it would need to be a condition that be two UDOT entrances.
were they requiring to the fire district?
Yes,
Okay.
for
Then
60
yes.
units they were.
So number three, talks about UDOT approval is a condition you suggest.
Mhm.
But it would need to be two, not just one.
Well, the approval of any and all accesses on the Powder Mountain Road, Senate Pass Road shall be submitted prior to scheduling recommendation for final approval.
Yeah, that addresses it. And
But doesn't address it when we don't, we're just assuming that, because we look at the plan, the only one we're looking at is the plan that only shows one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't talk about.
if you want to, you can. Yeah, it's gonna be covered when they do the.
If we added
So there's no
an additional hurts, condition, this phrase out of this letter from Williams, that says we will, it's conditional upon creating and recording an access easement over phase three.
part of it, right?
And
It's just right there.
for the benefit of phase two.
And then that is the gate.
Does that, right, does that mean you have access to the UDOT road in phase three? That's the part, because if you read that, I could say, well, yeah, you have access to that area.
It seems like-
Check the box.
Well, you have a
I don't
recorded-
have to get the UDOT entrance.
You have a recorded easement.
Well,
But
but
it doesn't say to UDOT, it says in the phase three.
Tammy, when they did preliminary approval for the
Mhm.
subdivision, did it require them to have an easement through there?
It required them to have approval for 2 exits from
Okay.
UDOT.
Well, that takes care of
But
it.
do they have it?
No,
No, not
that's
yet.
why they're not going for final. This is, they got the cart before the horse because they really should have went for the conditional use permit.
Yeah.
and Preliminary. But
So what are we ruling on that? What are we recommending? I'm confused that exactly what we're recommending on
on
this.
this one, it's any and all accesses are being required to have approval to do that. So,
So we're just recommending that before they can go forward, they need UDOT.
correct. And then in preliminary approval, it sounds like they have to obtain an easement.
Mhm.
And then both accesses would require UDOT approval.
Right.
So if you want to make it more specific, you could.
They're gonna do our meeting here or next?
Yeah.
Okay. uh, Welcome, everybody, to the August 27, 20 meeting of the regular meeting of the Ogden Valley Planning Commission. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We recognize Commissioner Wampner, Commissioner Barber, Commissioner Schweppe, Commissioner Schuman, Commissioner Burton are in attendance. And excused tonight are Commissioner Frohr and Commissioner Warby. Does anyone have any conflicts, communications to disclose? This agenda. I might mention that I received, just by way of reminder to us, I received a communication from an applicant over the weekend that wanted me to contact him, because this is an administrative item to respond to such attempts at communication, even though we would like to maybe. So I forwarded this on to Rick. Had staff respond. It's the way. Correct, counsel?
Correct.
All right. First item tonight is vote for chair and vice chair. This is kind of 2/3 of the way through a term. Anyway, so nominations are open for chair of the Ogden Valley Planning Commission. Nominations.
What's the status of your standing vice chair? You have?
Well, I've been vice chair for 2 terms. I think my term officially August. So I am being chair at this moment, but pretty soon we'll have it. Commissioner Schuman was the chair, but he timed out with 2 consecutive terms.
Then we did have Dason as the chair, and then he resigned. So right now we're chairless. Cortland, you want to go over that?
At this point, excuse me, the way the rules are written, there does not appear to be any prohibition on any member serving as chair right now because of the intervening time that Dason Johnson was the chair. There is a provision that says a member who becomes ineligible to hold an office based on the term limits stated here shall become eligible again to hold either office after 2 years have passed. It's not clear to me whether Commissioner Schuman, the way this is written, could be appointed as chair, but it does seem like he may be able to be appointed as at least vice chair, because he was not in, that position before. Or were you vice chair before chair? Okay, so that may be open. I would probably interpret this as saying he would not be eligible again to become chair, but it's not really clear the way it's written. The way it's written doesn't contemplate every exact scenario that could come up, but I think everybody else would be eligible at this point to be nominated and elected as chair. Vice chair, I would interpret this also to say the same thing. It says a member who has served, let's see. It says if a currently serving vice chair is selected to become the new chair, then the currently serving chair may not be selected as the new vice chair. So it prohibits a swap, a direct swap between chair and vice chair, but that wouldn't be happening here because Dason Johnson has been serving as chair. So that doesn't apply. And so I don't read it as prohibiting anyone from holding the vice chair position.
Current vice chair.
Well, he could continue as vice chair if he hasn't
Done it for 2 years.
timed out yet. Typically that ends in January, and this clarified with the most recent revision that the terms are going to end at the end of the year. So I don't think I would necessarily agree that as of the August date, Commissioner Burton's term ended. I think he could serve till the end of the year.
I thought you went through this a couple of months ago, maybe it was 3 months ago, when we first had a discussion about this, the first meeting when Dason had left.
Right.
You read through all the rules, and the discussion at that point was that although Commissioner Burton had served 2 terms, he had started in August, which would then mean that he could go until August, which he said timed out August 10th. But then you also mentioned something about anyone who was elected to their seat prior to July, I think, or
Before
August.
July 1st, yes.
Their term would end with the new year, but anyone after that, they get to actually roll into the new year, I thought, is what you had said.
Yeah, the way it is written here is the selection typically happens the first regular meeting of January. And an officer selected to fill a midterm vacancy before July 1st of any year may complete that term and then may serve 1 additional consecutive full year term in that office. So it would be finish that year and then serve another 12-month term. An officer selected to fill a midterm vacancy on or after July 1st may complete that term and then may serve 2 additional consecutive full year terms.
It wasn't that it rolls, it was just that it doesn't count as a full term.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
So how do people ever get through law school?
Good question.
Okay, so to break this down, a person can serve 2 consecutive years in the same position. If he, okay, another. But then he can change position, serve another 2 consecutive terms. But then-
Unless there is some kind of different rule that applies. Yes, that in standard practice, if there aren't any midterm changes, that would be the case.
Okay, now if there are midterm changes that happen before July 1st, then that person would serve until January, would be entitled to serve if reappointed 1 more year. So that partial year before January 1st or July 1st would be considered a full term,
Yes.
but not considered if a change takes place after July 1st.
Yes.
Okay.
So that would mean they could do. Well, no, because they could do an addition or in January. In this case, he's done 2 years in August, he gets a term and then get another year. For another-
No, because no, if someone is appointed after July 1st,
Right,
on or after July 1st, then they're able to finish that year and then can serve 2 additional full year terms. So it could be almost 2.5 years.
2 additional 1-year terms.
2 additional 1-year terms in addition to finishing the original year.
So these elections, at least of these commissioners, will go for the end of this year and then 2 additional years.
Yeah. If you reelect them, yes.
Okay.
So whoever is elected chair at this point in time can serve, that will be elected to serve as chair until January 1st.
Yes, and then they can be reelected.
Elections will happen again that person could be elected to serve an additional term to January. And another election could go an additional term, then is ineligible to serve as chair.
Correct. Yes. But if Commissioner Burton is reelected as vice chair right now, that would end in January of this coming year because he will have already served, as I understand it, 2 years plus a partial year. Is that correct?
I think you told me that I began as vice chair on August 3rd or 10th or something, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so that would be January.
For 2 years to this point.
So January of this coming year would be the end of his eligibility as vice chair.
And then clarification, you mentioned, or, because like I had served for 2 straight years, but then Dason. Is that
The way it is written only addresses that immediate flip of positions from chair to vice chair and from vice chair to chair. But that isn't going to be the case in any scenario here because the chair who has been serving is no longer a member of the commission. So that provision does not apply right now because there isn't a swap that's possible between chair and vice chair right now.
And when that change happened at the beginning of the year, that was under the old rules of order. And these rules were just revised in July, was it?
May.
May.
So Commissioner Schuman has new life. He's not timed out.
That's the way I
Considered
read
timed
it.
out for anything.
That's the way I read it, yes.
Commissioner Burton, we're not so sure.
I think we are sure. You've got,
Okay. All right. Any further questions on these elections? Okay. So I will accept nominations or it's open. We're open for nominations for a chair to serve until January 1st, 2025. Are there any nominations?
I'll nominate Commissioner Barber.
there actually is not a formal outlined process here. You can take other nominations, you can vote immediately on that, you can have discussion. It's not outlined.
Commissioner Barber has been nominated as chair. Are there additional nominations for the position of chair?
I would nominate Commissioner Wampler as chair.
Your Wampler. Any other nominations? Okay, we have 2 commissioners nominated as chair. How do we proceed with the election? Do we do secret ballots or what?
However you want, there's no process.
I would, in light of the way this is laid out right now, I would defer my nomination to Commissioner Wamp.
Commissioner Wapner, you accept your nomination as candidate to serve as chair.
And along with that too, part of the chair's responsibility is to have a chair and vice chair meeting just prior to the meeting, just schedule wise. So typically the Thursday before the meeting, we have a chair and vice chair meeting where we go over the agenda items. Just want to, so it's aware of timing,
What time is that at?
12 o'clock. And we can do it via Zoom or we provide lunch if you want to come into our office, either way. If we needed to adjust the time, we could do that as well. So.
So we have one candidate, all in favor of Commissioner Wamner becoming chair until January 1st, 2025.
Aye.
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 Vote for yourself.
Okay, nominations are now be accepted for the position of vice chair. Care to make a nomination?
I nominate Chair Burton continue until the end of the year.
Yes, the more I think about this,
He was elected after July 1st. He was have that
right, yes, he's definitely still eligible, in my opinion,
2 more years.
to finish out this year.
Yes.
Yes,
At which time he will become ineligible.
Ineligible.
yes, ineligible to serve as vice chair again.
I'm gonna nominate Commissioner Barber again. This one's different. Still make motions.
We have 2 nominations for vice chair, Burton and Barber. Any additional nominations? Okay. Commissioner Barber, you accept your nomination? Okay. Okay, I won't be offended. I'm happy if Commissioner Barber becomes vice chair. So I withdraw. I decline to accept my nomination to continue as vice chair. So we have one nominee, Commissioner Barber. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Barber, welcome. Looks like Commissioner Wamton, the chair is yours.
Congratulations.
See if I remember. But I've watched all this time. We can stay where we are, can't we? I think we,
One's the official.
I think.
I think we can stay where we are. We have 2 agenda items.
Get the button here.
I'll have to remember everything. First up would be approval of the minutes for July 30th, 2024. I believe there had been a little bit of discussion of any amendments. Does anyone have anything they need to amend?
I think I submitted some written changes. Okay, they've been incorporated.
Okay, I had a couple of changes myself. I have passed a hard copy over to Marta, but just for public record, at the start of it, the minutes were referring to a work session when that happened to be a regular meeting. Commissioners present added past Commissioner Pastenbaugh, who was not there. And then finally, on page 3 of the minutes, there was a reference to something that I had said that actually connotates the opposite of what I had said, which is that I was asking that the following work session be folded into that night's agenda to make better use of our time as volunteer commissioners that night. The minutes had reflected the opposite. So if those get changed, then I'm happy to approve these minutes. So do I call for a vote to approve the minutes? No, good. So approved. All right, first item on the agenda, we have 2 administrative items, and I'll follow suit of my predecessors that we ask the director to explain the procedure for administrative items.
as administrative item, you're just going to be seeing if it follows the ordinance or if it doesn't follow the ordinance, and you'll just be making a recommendation based upon the ordinance in place. We typically don't take public comment on these items, and Ms. Aydelotte's going to be presenting for staff.
All right. Good evening, commissioners. This first application is what's called a design review application. Essentially, this amounts to a site plan review, but the request is for an approval to expand the parking at the Hidden Lake parking areas at Powder Mountain Resort, located at approximately 6965 North Powder Mountain Road in Eden. This is located in the DRR1 zone. The purpose for this is to expand the parking for the Hidden Lake Lodge and the Sky Lodge located in this area. And I've got an area map pulled up just to orient everyone. Let me pull up a site plan here. Some of our requirements with regards to design review are things like landscaping, screening and buffering, traffic impacts. If there are any structures being proposed, we look at architectural standards as well. Those don't apply in this particular application. I've got the site plan pulled up here on the Zoom meeting. This is what is being proposed. So here's Summit Pass Road to orient you. This is, I think it's called Powder Ridge Road, that kind of circles up and around into the existing parking lot. Applicant is proposing to install an additional 178 stalls with a couple of entrances and a connection as requested by fire and engineering here. Engineering has simply requested that that turn be designed in such a way so as to allow a fire truck to be able to make that turn. I believe that the applicant has addressed concerns from fire as well as from engineering. There is some slope here, and the applicant has proposed not only some drainage and stormwater infrastructure here to just kind of control some of the runoff, but also some erosion control measures, including erosion control blankets and some seating up here. Staff would recommend approval for this, and the applicant is here, but I wanted to point out a couple of the staff recommendations. So I'm going to go back to this lot here. One of the recommendations is for the applicant to propose some screening or buffering measures along these platted residential lots here. So because you've got a couple of different uses, our design review standards do ask for that, just to mitigate any nuisances to the residential use immediately to the west here. The other one that our design review ordinance calls for is for a bonding for the landscaping that's being proposed and ultimately gets approved. So those would be our recommendations for approval based on the findings in the staff report. The applicant is here if you have any questions for him. If you have any questions for me, let me know.
I had a question for you, Tammy. Under landscaping in the packet, it's mentioned that the requirements of LUC section 108-1-4C provide landscaping to be more than 10% of the project area. And then below, about 2/3 of the way down, under minimum standards and guidelines of general landscaping, it mentions the exact same Exhibit C and talks about the minimum requirement to landscaping be at least 20% of the total area. I'm wondering which one we're going off of. Gotcha. I would recommend the 10%. One of these has to do under architectural standards where you've got a much more intense commercial use. And that's where that 20% comes in. However, it is under those standards. And so that section of the ordinance was put in there. Most all of this is going to be native landscaping outside of the parking areas and the resort use. So that standard, which is the 108-2, is actually if there was more of a structure being built there rather than a parking lot. Correct. Right. Okay. Okay. Anybody Any commissioner have any questions or comments for the applicant? If not, would the applicant like to say anything? Okay. All right. Well, then I'll call for a motion. Would anybody like to make a motion?
To recommend approval of DR 2024-04, subject to all review agency requirements based on the following conditions of approval, and those conditions are as written. So I'm not going to repeat them. Also, based on design review as written, points 6. So based on points 1 and 2 above and 1 through 6.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right. The motion passed.
I just
Oh,
wanted
sorry.
to clarify. This 1 through 6 are findings, correct? Yeah, based on those findings. Findings, okay.
All right. So the motion passes. Do I need to restate it? I don't think so. Do I need to restate? No,
Not unless you feel you need to.
don't. All right. Moving forward again. Tammy, you are up.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. The second item before you is a request for approval of an amendment to a conditional use permit for the Sundown Condominiums PRUD. The request for an amendment realigns a private roadway throughout the development located at approximately 6700 North Powder Mountain Road. This is located in the FR3 zone and consists of just about 7 acres. Wanted to give you a little bit of a timeline for this particular project. So in August of 1983, and this timeline is outlined in your staff report, the Weber County Commission approved a conditional use permit for this development consisting of 80 units. So phase 1 has 20 units and phase 2 is proposed to have 60. They required a bond for some of the improvements. It consists of a native landscaping plan, some open space, and private roadways in both phases. In 1984, phase 1 was recorded with those 20 units. They are continuing build out today. In January of 2022, the planning division received an application for phase 2 of the Sundown condos consisting of 60 units. The existing CUP is still valid, and staff recommended preliminary approval of this. In January of 2024, preliminary approval was granted again because a change to the roadway alignment had been submitted. So this is going to look a little bit familiar because they've come before you for preliminary approval of their subdivision to realign the roadway from when it was originally approved. Let me pull this up here. Make this a little easier to see. So originally this roadway came through phase 2. It actually had a couple of good bends, came through and connected to phase 1 to a previously platted roundabout and roadway that went through down onto Powder Mountain Road through an adjacent property. The applicant has given topography and some concerns from the HOA to the south. The applicant is proposing to realign the roadway, the same number of units, 60 units still. However, they're looking to have 2 accesses out onto Powder Mountain Road. Now, this access to the east, this one that stubs to the edge of their development and their CUP area, will eventually come out to Powder Mountain Road, whether it's through an additional development or through an access easement. And we typically address those details at subdivision. However, included in your packet as one of the conditions of recommendation is that they receive approval from UDOT prior to coming back with their subdivision application for final approval. So I realize we're looking at the CUP right now. Typically, the CUP amendment would come to you first and then the preliminary subdivision approval. That's not how this happened in this case. They received a preliminary approval in January, subject to them amending their CUP, which they brought before you. And just a reminder, the planning director is the land use authority for final approval for these. So you may not necessarily see the actual subdivision come back before you for final approval. It'll go before the planning director for that. But we still have the same requirements as far as the items they need to address, the things they need to button up before they can request that final approval. And that final approval from UDOT is one of those. So that's addressed here and it will be addressed in their subdivision as well.
Just for clarification, why it falls under the planning director? I thought that was 9 and under, and this is 60.
I'm gonna let Rick explain that.
State code requires that all final approval is done not at the planning commission level, but with the director. So that's why.
If I may, Chair, I believe that was a recent change.
It was.
That has not always been the case. So
Okay.
we used to have final approval and the state law changed in January. I
Correct.
think.
And we
How
had
about
to
this
make,
year?
and we had to make that change.
Okay,
Everyone in the state did.
got it.
Do you have any questions for me? The applicant is here as well. Do you have any questions for him?
Can you show that first picture, the one that the before?
This one?
So some of those units are already built, right?
In phase 1, some of them are, and the remainder are under construction or at least have building permits at this time.
And there'll be no connection now between Wolf Creek Drive and the applicant's development.
Correct. Phase 1 will have a turnaround that would allow emergency services to come in and be able to turn around and drive back out, but there will be no connection to phase 2.
Okay, how does this fit with the connectivity concerned about?
Right, connectivity concerns are, I think, ever present in this particular area where topography is a challenge and it doesn't always allow for roadways exactly where we want them across drainages and such. Our ordinance allows for terminal streets to have up to 30 dwelling units, but no more than that. Much of that is left to the discretion of county engineering, Weber Fire and Planning. We work in conjunction to apply that ordinance. The reason why phase 2 is required to have a second access is because they have more than 30 units that they're proposing.
And under the proposal we're considering right now, is the exit is an uphill exit, is that right?
Can you
The-
repeat?
The grade,
Yes.
so. So you gotta have that second exit, which is not so uphill to get out of here. And if the roads are really impassable.
Engineering, we meet regularly, actually, internally as a county to discuss the emergency needs, especially of the resort areas where it's challenging. And it would be challenging if there were an emergency to evacuate many people at once. So I know engineering is looking very closely at this. Fire has had comments on this and they're satisfied with what's being proposed. The fire district's code is a little bit different than ours. And so where their hands get tied a little bit in some instances, engineering sometimes can overlap or planning can with our ordinances, depending on the type of development and what applies. Does that answer your question?
But what's proposed now is there has to be that second access or nothing can be built here.
Correct. This will not get final approval without a second access.
I know we discussed it a little bit in the pre-meeting. I just wanted to state with the record that there were a lot of things that, and considerations that we put in place. I think it was in January. Is that when we last saw this?
Yes.
I know we had a lot of concerns about being able to, for snow removal, turnaround. I specifically remember discussions about the lack of guest parking. The only parking that is in the plan that we see is garage parking for the owners. And what that might look like if somebody invites somebody up, how that might impact the roads, anybody parking on those roads. So what I'm looking for is, on the record, anything we do with this proposal in front of us, will any of that need to be reinforced, or does that stay? All those conditions we stated back in January, are those still?
Those are still valid. That is still a valid approval. So any conditions that were brought up and mentioned in preliminary will move forward to final as well. They'll continue to apply to this.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Any commissioners with any questions for either staff or the applicant? Would the applicant like to speak?
My name's Guy Williams. I'm the civil engineer and owner representative. So I just wanted to give it a little background why we're having to make this change. Because originally it was supposed to go through phase one. There was a lawsuit with the phase one HOA where they didn't want access, which we actually won. But since then there's been appeals, and it looks like there's going to be no end to them. And so we've come to this conclusion to try and route through and not include an access through phase one. And so the phase one HOA is happy. The new owners of phase one that are doing the current construction and as well as phase two, this is kind of the end result of that discussion and that long mediation that's been going on for almost 3 years now. So that's really all I have. Thank you.
I have a question of the applicant. In your letter, you say there will be an access easement recorded across phase three.
Correct.
When will that be done?
It can be done in the next couple of weeks. So phase three owner is actually one of the owners of phase one and phase two. It's just a separate development because he's not working with the same group that's doing one and two. So phase three technically isn't quote unquote phase three. It's a separate development owned by a separate entity. And he has said that he will grant access, obviously, because he's part owner of at least all three projects. So we just need to draw it up and record it.
So that could be drawn up now.
Yes, I could have my surveyor draw it up
The
this week.
easement would be to a point on the main road where UDOT's got to approve the connection.
Correct, yes, and we're currently under review with UDOT right now for that connection.
Thank you.
I have a question for the applicant.
Sure.
On phase three, do we know if there will be more requests to access Wolf Creek Drive into phase three?
So phase three, Wolf Creek Drive actually goes through phase three. So it's actually owned by phase three, and there's an easement granted to phase one owners to utilize it. So there will be a connection point on Wolf Creek. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is it, so if we were to make a conditional of your approval that phase three include a separate UDOT or UDOT road access through there, would that be an issue?
UDOT's not going to allow another access. They would like interconnectivity. So we're not fighting with UDOT. They just want us to show why we need another access when in their records we show we have two already. And so we've presented on the legal work on the lawsuit that's been going on the last 3 years. And so I don't think that UDOT would like another fourth access to these units. if that makes sense. I think maybe I misunderstood your question.
I think we're just talking the third access through phase three.
Gotcha. So yeah, it's likely that they will approve. They just wanted to know why we want this additional access. And so we've provided them all the documents of the legal proceedings over the last 3 years.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess for clarification's sake, make sure that that road that you show on your drawing, I mean, is the questions, are we approving it to go there or looking at it to go there and then connect to the road or come down and connect to Wolf Creek or?
Go north and connect to the road to the north. Yeah.
So part of phase three will have its access from Wolf Creek Drive.
Correct.
Another part will have its access.
It'll be
above.
interconnected. So the road will go through all of phase 3 and connect Wolf Creek Drive up to back to phase 2 as well. So all the phases will be interconnected.
Okay. So somebody in phase two could get down to Wolf Creek Drive.
Correct. They'd have to drive through phase 3 to do so, but yes.
Okay. It's connectivity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this second access point for phase 2 is connecting to the road and not through phase 3 to the road.
Correct. It will go directly to the road. Do you have a? Yeah, it'll come off of that where it enters phase 3 and go swing north pretty quick after. The only reason it extends through phase 3 is grade issues. It's a steep hillside, so we had to extend to that far to meet fire code and engineering code.
So I'm sorry, it does go through phase 3.
It goes through the corner of phase 3, just that corner up. It doesn't actually, it's not the main road that goes through phase 3, though.
Right.
Yeah,
But to get back to the UDOT road.
it goes through that corner. Yeah, that north
Yes.
corner of phase 3, correct.
Okay, how
None of
much
the
fur-
phase 3 units are connected to that road, though. They all have a separate road that branches off.
So how much further southwest from phase two will that connection be made to the UDOT road?
It almost loops immediately north, so it's right in that corner, probably 50 feet from the property corners when it goes.
Okay, and that's the point that the road will go to Wolf Creek Drive.
No, not Wolf Creek, up to Powder Mountain Drive.
And that goes to Powder Mountain.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay,
Anything else?
anybody else?
Thank you.
Right. Any further discussion from the commission? All right, I'll call for a motion.
Go ahead. If any motion, I'd like to have the reiteration of the UDOT, just so I, for clarification's sake, it's my 2 cents. Discussion. That makes sense that we, so if in a motion that's made, I'd like to see us reiterate on that condition that it have the second UDOT access. That be basically stated as he did.
Rather than just stating as in the findings, but specifically mentioning the second.
And that the other conditions that have been set, as you clarified earlier.
Mhm.
So number 3, conditions, the UDOT approval for any and all accesses to Powder Mountain Road. I think you're suggesting maybe it should say a minimum of 2.
Yep, that's what I'm saying.
Any and all could be.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying. And just as a point of clarification for what we were told, make sure that's what this says. in the motion.
Can't speak. So on the final approval, does it say planning commission or will that be planning director? How is that changed on number 3 on staff recommendation at the end? For the final approval of UDOT road? Will that be presented before us again, or will that be
No, that would be part of final subdivision approval,
so with the director?
be the director.
Okay.
So I think what he's saying is, so we would need to change that language
Yeah. so
in number
planning
3.
commission.
Planning director.
You could even just put final approval of the required land use authority.
I'll make a motion. I move that, Young Valley Planning Commission approve the proposed amendment to realign the private roadway through the development set forth in CUP 2024-09 with the following conditions. Those conditions mentioned in the staff report 1 through 4, with a clarification that there be a minimum of 2 UDOT approved connections onto the Powder Mountain Road for access to this proposed phase 2. And that the proposed access easement across phase 3 be recorded, allowing access for phase 2 occupants to access across phase 3 to the UDOT connection on Powder Mountain Road. This is based upon the findings set forth in the staff report. Oh, I wanted to add one more. One more condition. That'd be condition number 5. There'd be a minimum of 2 UDOT connections for phase 2. Okay. Findings set forth in the staff report. That's my motion.
Do we need to mention the change?
If you want it as part of the motion, then yes, you should mention it.
Only because you state the findings in the report, and the report have that we are going to do final approval. The land use authority.
Let me amend my motion. Number 3, where it mentions planning commission for final approval, that should be the land use authority.
Okay. Do we have a second?
My second.
Okay. Any discussion? Let's call for a vote. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. CUP 2024-09 is approved. Okay, next up, we have public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public either in the room or online that would like to make comment? We don't have anybody in the room, so if anybody online would like to raise their hand. All right. Next on the agenda, we have remarks from planning commissioners. Any planning commissioners want to bring up anything? Next up is the planning director report.
Have anything, Madam Chair?
Remarks from legal counsel.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Right. Next up is that we adjourn. Do I make a motion to adjourn?
I want to ask legal counsel to use all his power to fix Ogden Canyon.
Is that going under public comments? From planning
I
commission?
don't know what imaginary power you think I.
Anybody make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Second, all right. Aye.
Aye.